I'll now recognize myself for 5 minutes. So growing up, my main sports were basketball and soccer. Unfortunately, I didn't make the freshman team for basketball. Still blame that on a late growth spurt. And I played 1 year of freshman soccer, but wasn't good enough for varsity. I did end up playing tennis for all 4 years, although nowadays, to be honest, I play more pickleball. Don't tell anyone. But the point is kind of like the ranking member was just saying. There's this sort of inherent winnowing process in a lot of sports. And so to follow up on Mr. O'Sullivan on your last answer, how do we maintain opportunities for young people of different skill levels? I think soccer does a pretty good job of this. You have rec and select and competitive. But even then, sort of the rec leagues tend to winnow out as kids get older. So how do we make those opportunities more durable?
Well, I think it's, again, this education around what is the purpose of sport. And, parents ask me all the time, how does my kid make the elite team? And I think that's the worst word in sports is elite for little kids. And I just say, just change the name of your team. That's what everyone else does, is they just call their team elite, right? I just think it's this thing that we have to keep as many kids as possible, as long as possible, in the best environment possible. The countries that do it best in sport development, they keep those kids. They're not making cuts at 6 or 7 years old. They're not forming competitive teams. And, I remember I had a friend who lived in New York City, an author named David Epstein, and he said to me, John, I live in Brooklyn, and I look out the window, and there's a 7-year-old competitive travel soccer team practicing in the park across. He goes, and I find it really hard to believe that a 7-year-old team has to travel to get a competitive game in a city of 10 million people.
And Mr. Boyle, it seems to me maybe one of the issues here is the state of PE in our schools. Have you looked at that at all, to the extent to which there's a connection between robust PE programs and youth sports participation?
Yeah, it's interesting because we get the luxury of walking into lots of schools across the entire country, and there's no consistency as far as physical education is concerned. The patterns are just weird sometimes. You might get one PE class every 2 weeks, or maybe you do 2 weeks or 4 weeks of PE, and then you don't get it till the next year. And there's not always a focus on sport, and I get it. My PE colleagues would say there's more to physical education than just sport, but I don't think it has to be either or. I think that schools can work in a way that teach fundamental sports skills so that kids have some confidence to perhaps do some sports outside of school time. And so I think there's an opportunity here to create some consistency around how it's being delivered and to recognize the value of sport.
Yeah, I think that's an important aspect of this, that is how a lot of young people get habituated and learn different sports and learn the value of physical activity. And Mr. Ferry, you had a couple other, I think, policy recommendations that you wanted to share with us. Do you want to take just a moment to go through those?
Yeah, and again, I appreciate for going along the first time. Number one, collect better data from the federal government. Push it down to the local level so folks can make decisions at a local level for what makes sense to them, right? Second of all, I would suggest that we register all youth sport organizations. You can't manage what you can't measure, right? The Safe Sport Act of 2017 requires that any member of an NGB or a national governing body register with the U.S. Center for Safe Sport and get their coaches trained in abuse prevention and pass background checks. The problem is that covers at best 1/3 of youth sport providers. I think all youth sport providers should be required to register with the center, and they should receive a benefit for doing so. Maybe it's free or discounted background checks or abuse training. I think that will reduce costs, level the playing field, and help manage a very messy landscape. Secondly, I think you can redirect the sports betting tax. So I'm not a fan of sports betting, but it's here and it's not going away, and it's raising significant revenue for the federal government, nearly $400 million last year in excise taxes. What if instead of that money going into the black hole that's the federal budget, that it went to closing gaps in youth sports, background checks, coach training, injury prevention, programs for low-income youth? Take from the treetops and give to the grassroots. Thirdly, I would recommend that you review federal investment criteria. So taxpayers already support local recreation through the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which uses proceeds from offshore oil drilling to provide municipalities with matching grants to build facilities. Educate states on ways to prioritize access to community sports. You can also use economic development assistance grants to build sport facilities, youth sport facilities. I think there's bipartisan support for that. My final ask is, please don't please don't reform college sports without looking at the implications on youth sports, because anything you do at the college level in terms of employee status or NIL or sport offerings will have a downstream effect on youth and school sports.